of people to tell him. So David, I heard that you got wide on. I don't have to.
No, yeah.
I got it. I kind of like my WID over here. Actually, I have a WID. Lowercase e. I don't want to be a Casey. I'm a witty. Lowercase e.
I want to keep this between me and Brett. Yeah.
This is the beauty of being in business for yourself and not by yourself. So, you got wide on some stuff this week, and I heard a rumor that you made some commitments to you that I think we might help grow your E if you shared with your team.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I committed to hold start holding myself accountable in my business. Sat down with Brett, and I can actually go and have a first with someone, and I can have a conversation with a couple with friends or anybody that I'm sitting down with. But I've never really historically never got a commitment, never gotten to go back and deliver the actual FNA, the financial needs analysis. And when I had the conversation with Brett, I was like, yeah, I always stop myself. I don't, because I know it's the next level. And I'd rather just work on what I know, and just want to stay in this little area here because I'm comfortable. So what we did is Brett and I created this 60 appointments in 60 days, right? And what it is I created a nice chart. I don't have it on me. It's in the office. And every time that I actually get an appointment, so it's counted down from 60 all the way to 1. And it's a nice little 6x10, right? So every day that I get an actual appointment and I go talk to someone and I follow through and get the commitment, and I'm not going to leave until I get the commitment and come back. And the way I'm going to do that is letting people know that I'm just practicing, right? That I'm just doing this for my skill, because I am not good at this. I don't need them to buy. I don't need them to sell any. I don't need them to buy anything yet. And if they do want to buy something, and if they're like, David, I need protection, you need to sell this to me, they're going to have to call Access Support, and they're going to have to articulate to Access Support and Brett why they need it. But I can write up the sell to hold myself accountable that I am actually learning this skill for these next, until I'm done with the 60. It can be until December, but I'm checking them off every day, right? And it's forced me to reach out to my friends that I've already had great communication, great relationships with, and letting them know, guys, I need your help, right? I need your help because I just need to learn this skill. I need to master this skill of getting your commitment, delivering, writing and putting in information, so I can get good at this. And I think I've talked to five of my friends, and they all 5 said yes. So I have them all on the board. I can't. So I actually went back to Brett and I talked to Brett. I said, hey, Brett, so I got 5 on the board that we're going to sit down with them next week. I said, do I start checking off? And he's like, no. You check off when you go, you get the commitment, and you go back and deliver it, then you check it out. See, so me going back to him and getting clear on how I'm going to hold myself accountable was a key factor as well. So I'm doing that. It's a 60, my new hashtag is 60/60. So it's what I'm telling myself to keep myself motivation and accountability measuring.
It reminds me of the ESPN.
Right. For 60. I love it. Thank you.
So you guys want to tag on it, then just tag 62.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And so now you have enrolled all of us in supporting you and helping to keep you accountable. We have a couple more minutes. Is there anyone else who wants to share something with the group that you want the group to be part of your accountability plan? Yeah.
So, we're going to schedule my test for September 20th.
Awesome.
So I need to hold myself accountable and practice self-discipline and spending my time studying the material and being ready for test. And by mid-January, we want to have my investment licenses ready as well. So I think these are big steps for me. It makes me a little nervous. My hands a little sweaty thinking about putting in the time, holding myself accountable, because I haven't. For the last year, I've been trying to start my own company. I've taken baby steps here and there, and now that I have a reseller's license, and I have all these things together, I have everything I need. I stopped at finishing my website, publishing it, and really starting my dream of what my company needs to be. So I think this is a good step in holding myself accountable for these tests. And once I have those completed, I feel a lot more confident starting my own business.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome. A really fun thing we have in here is how you do something is how you do everything. And you will find that the commitment that you put here will automatically bleed into the rest of your life. So the track that you put yourself on is a really smart thing to do. So congratulations for that. And we, as a crew, are here to support you and hold you accountable to the tests and to your dreams. That's the fun part, right? Ooh, I just got chills. You're gonna have fun with that company too. What kind of company is it?
I'm starting a lifestyle clothing company that promotes positivity and hopefully gives back to nonprofits, volunteer events.
Great. Fun stuff. I love it. Okay, are we technically ready?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to invite my Evans husband up. Thank you for sharing this morning. And we have Slack. Remember, we're getting back to Slack. So anytime you have something that you're working on in the business, part of your life, it's what you do in your life within business, what you do in business within your life, Slack it out. And we're all here to support each other. Cool? Yep. Cool.
Y'all excited?
Woo-hoo.
I think there are people in the room that are suddenly like, wait, 60. Okay. So, and it's funny because this morning we're gonna talk about Oznite and our list and kind of where things are, because we're at a really fun place. But I think it's important that as a team, today's one of those for the next like 5 minutes or so. I hopefully you'll listen the whole time, but for the next 5 minutes, to kind of acknowledge and understand where we are and what's going on, right? So for the last long time, right, for the last handful of years, we've worked really hard on the language. We said, okay, how do we explain, how do we figure out what we aren't, right? How do we figure out what we are? What do we do? What's our language? What's our systems? What's the lineup? What's the tools? What is this? How are people going to learn it? How are they going to get licensed? And we've spent every damn waking hour, right, in our primary business and every meeting talking about the value and importance of our language, right? Because it's critical. And so part of this has been incredibly powerful because I think there's a lot of the folks in the room that are like, all right, the language. I got it, man. I can do the lineup. I know this. I'm learning this. We're recruiting, we're developing. This is awesome. We're going to enroll. This is fantastic. So I would like to acknowledge that the language is incredibly valuable. And so I'm going to spend the next couple minutes on making sure we're all incredibly clear what the if is. And this might be an uncomfortable conversation because we might have thought that the language was going to replace the if. And the language doesn't replace the if. The language says if the if is done, the language allows us to propel quicker with limited resistance. Well, Brett, what do you mean? Well, the language is great if there's someone to tell it to, Is that true?
Yeah.
Like, Sin, you could completely understand the fact that you're part of a financial services company that specializes in wellness for businesses and organizations. Next sentence, you can talk about the power and the impact of Main Street families and the way they work and all of that stuff. But if there's no one to tell it to, does that language matter? Isn't that interesting? We can get really convinced that the language matters. And the language matters if there's someone to tell it to. The language matters if the people you tell it to take you seriously. Right? Like, we could have professional language, all of the support, everything together, but if you're a fool, are they going to hear it? No. Isn't that fascinating? We spent 6 years, 7 years on dialing in the language. The language works if you take you seriously. Believe that you should be someone should follow, translate to how they receive it. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah, we've got a financial services company, and it specializes in wellness for companies and organizations. I mean, most people have something, but we're trying to, help out. Said the same thing, didn't we? But would that have an impact? But it has an impact. See, part of what, now here's the funny thing, and my wife's gonna be very, very excited, because see, for 15 years, I was an expert at it. Man, everything we talked about in Primerica is about the if. Every Primerica meeting, for the last 6 years, we walked out of a meeting, David, and said, there's no office in the country that's running this meeting. We bragged on that. We felt really powerful for the last couple of years, but man, there's not another office in the country that's talking like this. Right or wrong? Right. Guess what? There's lots of offices talking about this. Right now. Across the country. If you don't show up early, if you don't go late, if you don't take yourself seriously, if you don't act like a business owner, if you don't create the environment, if no one else is going to. Wait, Brett, we're going back? Building a business is building a business. Jim Rohn said this. The language is like a safety pin or a stick pin, right? It's a stick pin, right? If you jam it in, it'll hurt. But if you take that same pin and you wrap it to a 5-inch pipe, you can stick that pin through their heart. See, what we've got to do, the power of belief, the power of understanding, the power of language, the power of concept, the power of vision, the power of is incredibly powerful. Primerica's created the most powerful financial services distribution company on the planet. Solely on it. What we said was, all right, we want to create a space for everyone and role for all of us. So we're going to create language where people can identify, where people can feel comfortable, where people can say, I'm going to learn these skills because I'm going to apply it to another business. My passion's there, but this is great, right? We can attract, we can develop, we can keep people full-time in their jobs so that we don't have to get them to alienate their family. They don't have to do all this stuff. We don't need to have interventions when someone goes full-time, right? There's a myriad of reasons why we built the language support systems and foundations that we've done. And we spent a tremendous amount of time saying we are going to prioritize this because it doesn't exist. But here's the benefit, here's the reality. I've been running IF in my Primerica business since the day I got here. For the last 6, 7 years, we've stayed in business. We've been profitable, we've won contests, we've won trips, we've gotten recognition, we've created momentum, we keep recruiting, we keep getting people coded, we keep stumbling forward. Why? Because building a business is still building a business while we were building the language. That make sense? What we didn't do is hold this room accountable to if, because we wanted to magnify and flesh out the language. Does this make sense? Because the language was more important than the if when building the language was the priority. But we now have it, huh? We've got 6 wellness co-programs we're doing by the end of the year. We've got a couple relationships, right? So we're starting to create. We're starting to get into the schools. We're going to start creating some momentum in that in terms of what's going on. Right? We're rolling out. We've got different foundations. There's a handful of things that are starting to develop because of the language that is going to be a natural evolution over the next period of time. We got to keep getting better. We got to keep getting stronger. But when I met with David, right, the conversation was, he showed up with his entire lineup fleshed out. He didn't have to spend any time. He's like, here's my lineup. I got to ask him, how many of them are clients? What was the answer? None! Do you know what? Now, what can you imagine? And you don't have it, do you? You have it in your bag? Go grab it. You got to see this, because this is run, please. Right? On Forest Run. Right? This is where this goes. Right? But what's going to happen, and you'll get to understand why this is so critical. Because you're going to see this list, and when you think about a list, like a lot of us picture like 6 names on a list that's jotted down in some haphazard way, right? And I sat down and I'm like, okay, right? So David sat down, he's like, okay, I got to get this thing going. Man, I'm sick, right? I'm focused, I'm motivated, I want to create some momentum, I want to get after this stuff, right? He's met with Robin, Robin's like, here, we got to get the list, right? And so, run! Oh, you screwed on my timing. Go! No, you're not. You're standing there. Y'all excited? So the beauty of this, right? And so to tell the end of the story first, right? So I'm going to show you this list, but none of them are clients. How is that possible? It's possible because we haven't cared about actually the implementation of the language, because you can't implement the language without understanding the if. But we took the if and we put it aside and said, let's get the language, let's get the language, let's get the language. Let's run the tools, let's develop the skills so that we've got it. But without the if, you got to go through the if to be able to tell the stories. Because you got to have someone tell it, you got to be able to have them take you seriously, you got to take yourself seriously. You got to know what you're doing, why you're doing. Go back. Right? Step by step, baby. Step by step. Right? Well, so is this making any sense? Yeah. And so part of this, right? So yeah, check this out. So David sits down. He's like, man, I'm focused. I got to get this thing going. He's like, man, I put my list together. Like, can we all agree? Like, that is a clean, organized list, right? We've got our scout team. We've got our hots. We've got our warms. We've got our lukewarms. We've got our pros in this. Like, that's a serious damn list. Now, David sat down to be honest with me. David's here was David, right? And if you guys have ever worked with me, one of my fun things is whatever you expect me to do, there's a really good chance I'm going to do something completely different, because we should both enjoy the conversation. But so David's like, can we talk for 2 days? Can we talk yet? You got a minute now? I got this with Jake's. All right, can we talk yet? So I want to talk about kind of my business. Dude, this is a serious list. It's awesome. How many of them are clients? This was not the question David was expecting. But here's where the fun is. See, I know where David is. See, I operate in it. We know how to ask where they're at, where are the challenges, where are the struggles, what are we doing, what's the foundation, what do we got to do? My job is to help him navigate through that experience. Does this make sense? David's incredibly open to, I don't want to feel like this anymore. If there was a shirt that we could, like if someone said, what's the best sentence you've heard where someone's ready to functionally change? That's the sentence. I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't care what the change is. Right? You want to stop smoking. I don't want to feel like this anymore. You want to lose weight. I don't want to feel like this anymore. You want to be better read. I don't want to feel like this anymore. Like there's an emphasis at some point that says, maybe that's not the only one, but it's one over 20 years that I have found usually is a precursor to change. And David's like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. What do I got to do? And so we started thinking about what's the if. Well, David likes the idea of closing sales and getting business and stuff like that. So there's a part of him that's like, okay, closing sales is out of alignment with access.
Yes.
That's David's story. That closing business is out of alignment with access. It is. When the language is the priority. See, David got that thinking from hanging out with me. Why? Did I ever tell David that closing business isn't in alignment with access? Hell no! Because I enjoy closing business. But what I did do is, David, I know, look, so dude, what we don't want to do is just go in and write up, man. We got to make sure of that. And so David's like, well, I don't know the language, and you're telling me the language is key, so the only choice I have is to pull myself way back until I can feel like I'm in alignment with what it is you're trying to tell me we're going to do. Does that sound fair? So the easiest thing to translate it is closing business is out of alignment with access because the way I think about closing business isn't in alignment with the way we're going to do it with access, and I don't trust myself to know the language well enough, so I'm going to pull myself back until I can learn this. And I didn't fix the thinking. Well, that's not very nice of you. No, I was focused on, we got to get this language down. Now, I was overt and honest about it. At no point was I like, hey, I'm going to show you all how to make $500,000 the next year while we completely reinvent this thing. Have I ever said that? I'm like saying, man, I don't know how long it's going to take us. If you stay around, man, you keep this, we're going to get it stronger and better and stronger and better. If you need to, go take a break for a year. When you come back, we'll be further down the line. Have I said that publicly, privately to everybody in this room? Absolutely. I'm not saying it now. You ever heard me say it in the last 60 days, have you? Because, hey, look, if you take a break, you come back a year from now, we will be further. We will have more systems. We will have more fleshed out. But the bulk of it, and this was the fun conversation, most of the stuff we're working on now, won't be presented in a room like this. Because it's the details of what are we doing after a wellness and how do we do, and we'll be teaching and talking about it, but we'll be talking about it with the leadership team and the business developers and the folks that are growing. The folks that are like, hey, just send me on an appointment, they're just like, here, run this system. You know how exciting that is, Arson? If you're like, Shears, I don't want to learn something new, you don't got to worry about it. Because we got the language down. Will it get a little tighter and a little cleaner? Absolutely. Will we get better at running it? Absolutely. Well, what do? We have a financial services firm that specializes in and focuses in business or financial wellness for businesses and organizations. We found that in the industry, most of the financial advisors spend a lot of time with the owners, but they don't do much for the employees, and there's really no money in it. There's no opportunity for them to grow, and they just can't do it on volume. And so we said, man, we have an unbelievable opportunity of amazing people that are all full-time in their jobs, but they need to make life a little bit easier, a little bit cleaner in their life, right? An extra $5,000 to $10,000 can fundamentally change somebody's situation. So, man, let's get them licensed. Let's help us get this story out. We said, if we can solve two problems at the same time, that's unbelievable. If we could bring the financial literacy to the people who desperately need it and give amazing people that take care of their family but need life a little bit easier to make it a little bit easier, if we could bring those two things together, does it get any better than that? We can tell that story, can't we? Is there anything I just said that you're like, wait, what? I've never heard that before. That's our business. That's our language. That's what we do. 2 years from now, that's our story. The details of exactly how we're going to do step by step by step, that shit's going to change a ton over the next 2 years because we're going to try and test and this and that and the other. But that part of the third doesn't change. You're going to have brand new people sitting right here 2 years from now, and that's what they're going to hear because that's our story. Well, Brett, how can I tell that? Because for 15 years, my shit didn't change. We teach people how to make and save money. Which would you prefer? Excuse me, one of you can help me. I'm a business in the area of that. This shit never changed. Why would it change? It works. Why would we change financial wellness for businesses and organizations? It works. It elevates the mindset. It gives us a conversation. It creates us an opportunity to create passion in our story. It lets us develop a conversation of passive income. It introduces the Uber American. It allows us to explain why recruiting is so valuable. It allows us to get emotional on the impact of what we do and how we're going to reach. It allows us to tell that our market is the most important thing, so we're going to increase credibility. You can practice on our market. You can get trained on our market. You can practice and learn so that when you go to your market, you have increased credibility. We got the language down. Now, you might not have it down yet, but the question is, why? Now, here's what's really fun. And I'm doing this a lot, but I'm really good at this business. I'm getting pretty good at this shit. Now, I gotta learn how to access a little bit because I can be authoritative, right, in the traditional business of. Because so there's gonna be some combinations and some stuff that we practice and do all this other stuff. So there's some opportunities for growth, obviously. But so here's my conversation with David, and I wanted you to understand this because part of this is a shift in your brain. That you have the opportunity to realize that anything that happened yesterday, from yesterday, anything you've done up to this point in your Primerica business can be a predictor of value, but not a predictor of results. Because the if becomes the dragon. Not the language. The language is the dragon until we had it. For Sue, the language has been the dragon. You know why? Because I'm like, she's like, what do I say? I'm like, I'll tell you in 3 months. What? Sue, I don't know yet. Well, what are you working on? I'm not going to tell you what I'm working on. Why? Well, because and I told her this yesterday. I go, here's what I know. When I did 1, 2, and 3 in 3 different conversations, they work. So now I have to figure out the combination. And if I tell you it's 1, 2, and 3, and it happens to be 3, 1, 2, I have to unlearn all this other crap. So we're going to learn. So all of a sudden, I'm like, Sue, got it. Here, try this. And she's like, wow, we work on this. Where does this go? Does that make sense? Okay. Y'all excited? Yeah. What's going to stop you? It might be a piece of paper. It might be a piece of paper. A piece of paper might stop you. Brad, how could a piece of paper stop you? A piece of paper could stop you if you're not taking notes. Well, I don't need to take notes. Great. We can start talking about ifs now. Why would a piece of paper stop me? I have an eidetic memory, Brad. I don't need to write anything down. I don't need to write anything down. I can hear and process. I don't need to. I got all of it. 1, there aren't very many people that can do that. 2, what is our business? Our business is leadership and influence, isn't it? Now, how many of you guys have seen my writing? How good do you think my notes are in my journals?
You can understand them.
I can? I type now more than ever because it's the only way that I can write. But why? I've never been able to write clearly. I've always had chicken scratch. But for the first 15 years of my professional business, I didn't walk into a meeting without a notepad. Why? 1, probably not a meeting that I went to that a list wasn't written. Not because someone's like, make sure you write the list. Because I'd be in the middle of a conversation, I'd hear something and it would trigger, oh shit, what about? And I'll be honest with you, my lists inside my journal might be the most important thing in some of the meetings. Because a lot of Sandlot meetings, not all that much value all the time. Hopefully, because of our language, we get to have significantly more value, significantly more of. But someone explained to me a long time ago, my friend Tony's got a piece of paper. So how much easier is it for David to have a piece of paper? Significantly easier. Well, let's say David learned by processing and writing. If Tony comes into meetings without a piece of paper, Now, David has to be an emotional leader in his own life to be able to say, my upline, the guy that recruited me, doesn't need it, but I do. Which takes a certain set of energy that not everybody has. So now the question is, if they need it, but we don't provide the opportunity for them to take it easily, does that have an impact? What's the cost? Brett, that shit's stupid. I'm not saying it's smart. I'm asking, what if I'm that guy? What if I walk into a meeting, you accidentally recruit me? You weren't even trying. Well, Marco, I got licensed and wrote $10,000 of personal premium first 3 months in a row. After 14 months, I had a 50-app business. Like, I'm the type of guy you want to override. If you're going to build an exception business, I'm kind of what you're looking for. And what if I'm David and I need to write something down to remember it, but Tony doesn't, so I don't think it needs to be done? So this isn't a critical, you got to do it, you don't got to do it. Man, we're adults in this room. Do whatever it is that you need to do. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. I'm trying to understand, to explain the difference between the value of the language as a business and the value of the language as a tool. Because if it's used as a tool, the if becomes the most powerful thing. Because what books are we reading? What conversations are we having? We're going to get back into self-improvement, growth. Why? Because at the end of the day, what's the difference between a player and a doer? What's the action word? What's a player do? What's a player do? So what does the player do? What's the upline do for the player?
No, I'm sorry.
The upline, the action word is for me, right? So on the line, guys, this is why this, right? So we're now not in the language, we're in the if. Let's not get this confused by any stretch. I'm not about to rail on. You got to know the language. The language is completely integrated, validated, and friggin' works. Now we have an if problem. You haven't figured out a way to get you to care enough about it to actually master it because you don't think it matters. Now we have an if problem, not a what problem. Does this make sense? Here's what I was trying to explain, right? So the action word for player is instruct. The action word for starter is drive. Okay, who are these words for?
So instructed for the starter.
So if this is my lineup and I have a player, what's this word tell? Who does this word talk to?
Yeah, starter.
No, you.
But to me. So it's telling me that I'm supposed to do what to the player? Instruct. Which means the role of the player is to what? Learn.
Yeah.
Don't overthink this. This shit ain't that complicated. If my job's to teach, your job's to learn. And we use the word instruct rather than teach because we didn't want something. We wanted to make sure that there was almost a clinical experience to it because it's value information, not superiority conversation. Let me teach you something. No, I'm going to instruct you how this stuff works. So we chose that word on purpose. But that's the indicator. If my job, Marco, is to instruct, your responsibility is to learn. Now, what's my responsibility as a starter, or my responsibility to a starter? Is I'm driving them. What's their responsibility? What are they learning? What's their job? What is drive? What's the interactive dynamic to drive? They've got to do. They've got to execute. So we're learning. This isn't a complicated thing, but this is where the synapses haven't connected. Versus doing. The player's learning as a starter. They're learning how to do. They're doing. Why? You got to translate from I've learned this stuff to I need to apply this stuff. This is where that shift starts to go. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So David knows the lineup. How do I know that? Because this is friggin' clean. Dude, this is pretty clean. Right? Here's 48 people on a list. I know where they are. I can put a game plan. I can explain why they are. I can there's a value and a reason for them to be here. It's Dewey because he built the list. No. That's the applied learning. Now the question is, what are you going to do with this list? Well, wait a second. I thought building the list was the doing. No. Building the list is the passing test of the learning. It's the validator that you learned. Now, how do we convert from the learning to the doing? Where the tension has been. Now, guess what? In most Primerica offices, they don't have this tension. Because you minimize the value of learning. Most Primerica offices, learning is the enemy. Doing is the only thing that matters. We don't subscribe to this concept because if we're going to raise and develop entrepreneurs, they should probably know what they're doing. And I believe that if you understand and have a clear picture as to the whys, you're a whole lot faster and stronger with less resistance. Which is why I explained, why do I need to take notes? You don't have to take notes, but you have to understand and evaluate the net operating cost. Is it worth it? Mark Younger used to say this. I'm so like, there's gonna be like Primericaisms are gonna start coming out, y'all. 5 years out, 6 generations deep. It's a great set. It's a great frame of reference. If everyone in your organization 5 years from now, 6 generations deep, function and behave the way you function and behave, will you have the business you want? I want everyone taking notes so they can reference it, they can go through it, there's a space for them to learn. Man, everyone's just going to pick it up and they'll get what they want. Those are the two juxtapositions on this particular topic. 5 years out, 6 generations deep. If you were to articulate which one you think is going to create a stronger business, from that point. My job is to not make, and I'm genuinely not trying to make anyone feel bad. I'm not trying to make anyone mad. Like, that's not what this is about. I'm using a simple, tangible example that doesn't have a value judgment of life philosophy. It's up to this point, I've never said a freaking word to anyone about any of this stuff. How could you know? Right? Oscar and Bob have never been in the meeting. They've been here for 3 years. I've never once said anything about whether they should write anything down or not. This isn't a value judgment on them. If there was 7 of you, there'd be 7. If we had to talk about it all, like, it would have this conversation. Y'all just happen to be the specific area, but it's not, this isn't highlighting you as an example. This is how could you know any different? I'm actually impressed we have more people doing it. I have no idea, like, it genuinely, either y'all are way smart, because I wouldn't have done it, I don't think. And if I walked into a room like this, there ain't no way I had a piece of paper. Robin would have her pens lined out, right? Highlighter, the recorder, a backup recorder, an extra battery, like, that would be right in terms of this stuff. Right? Robin would have been fighting over the first chair in the front row, not anything else. Right? There's not right or wrong, it just is. So what happens is we start with this process. I'm supposed to have a whole conversation on,
Keep going.
but
You have time.
okay, but so is this making any sense? And so it's exciting because now we get to start having, what is the impact of this conversation?
Because the idea that maybe think of in terms of a business, outside of this business, is that the language is kind of developing what your business is going to be in terms of, like, what are we selling or what are we going to be servicing or what? You know, you got to build that infrastructure. You got to kind of have that business model. And then when you're ready to launch, talk about it, market it, whatever. That's the idea.
Yep. Because no one gives a crap how you put the screws together. They care if they can see them. If they bulge out and your hand can get cut, but you don't care because you shouldn't actually be running your hand under the bottom of it, then that's that conversation. So that's a perfect example. This is where we are. And so what happens is, look, we're not going to turn all metaphysical, right? We're not going to have, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. There's not going to be big therapy sessions in terms of people coming up and talking about their challenges as a childhood to be able to drive through their ifs. We've still built an environment where we will help you clear your hurdles and we will recommend good therapists for you to clear your issues. And I am not critical about that. I will overtly say, like, this is a critical component. If you need someone to talk to, you need to be responsible enough to find someone to talk to. We all have different battles to fight. Go handle what you got to handle. But if you had a business issue, you got a business hurdle, we'll clear that stuff because we built the language for it. But what we do get to start doing is confronting our ifs. Because if we have the language, the story, the environment, and the belief, but no one in our life, no one on this entire list is a client. Do you think David believes in the importance of college funds? Yeah. It's one of the things he's most proud of when it comes to his daughter. When we opened that account, like you told them, like, and I, to be honest with you, I didn't appreciate it. I was like, hey, we're just opening up the account. For him, it was like, and I don't know if it's because he never had an account. I don't know what it is, but David, like, he's so, like, he's gone to dinners, like, he's had different conversations, and he's like, dude, man, you got a college fund? He thinks and feels and communicates about a college fund the way I used to communicate about cash value insurance. I'd go to a barbecue, they talk about Primerica, and I'd rail on how bad cash value life insurance, right? I put myself through school because someone lied to my family. Like I got that story down. And that's how David feels, in my opinion, about his daughter's college fund. Y'all with me? Yeah. High emotion. True? Tremendous amount of pride personally as a father. True? So I know this about my friend. So I asked him. Do you remember the question I asked? After the second question.
How many of these people have kids?
So that was the first question. How many are my clients? None. Okay. How many have kids? What was the answer?
About 80%.
About 80% of them have kids. I have a question for you. How is this possible? It is. Because it's happening. And I'm not putting a judgment on it. Like it's not. No. This is what our business is. How is it possible, Arthur, that David takes as a father one of the most, in my opinion now, one of the most pride-creating things he's done as a father is establishing an account where he can look at his daughter and go, Mija, you can go to any school, we got to take care of, and it's done. One at least the top 10 pride-creating things as a father. He's got a group of people who likes and trusts him, that he likes and trusts. 80% of them have children, and none of them even know about the Coverdell of the 529. How is this possible? Now, before any of y'all get all judgy, I can pull out your phone, I can pull out your list, and I can pull out your last 12 months of production, and it ain't any better. If better is the measurement that we're talking about. And I'm not talking about better or bad, good or bad right now, right? I'm talking about the if. I'm trying to get us all to recognize it couldn't be any other way, because this is what we needed it to be. We needed to prioritize the language over the impact so that we could get the language dialed in and not get off the rails. I was in this business for 15 years. I never missed a meeting for 15 years. I traveled the country with friends and family in this business. I've developed great relationships in this business. I've been to funerals and I've been to weddings. I've been to baptisms. I've been to weddings. I've had great relationships in our Primerica family. And then for 4 years, I didn't go to a meeting. I didn't answer a phone call for 4 years. Why? Because I couldn't afford the corruption in my head. I'm not saying that that's what everyone should do. I'm not saying it was the right choice. I'm saying that's what I did. And it wasn't the first time I did this, right? I used to participate a lot in high school with extracurricular activities of a variety of sorts. What's that you take? I was drunk and stoned a whole lot. I was like, statute of limitations, I'm good. No, a lot, like a lot. 2.5 to 3 years of a lot.
You remember high school.
I got some pictures and I got some things I don't have pictures of. But a lot. But I got particular with a friend of mine that he and I were, right, we were buds, right? So we did a lot. And New Year's Eve, my senior year of high school, he got trashed beyond a level, and he called me January 2nd, I'll never forget this as long as I live, January 2nd, and he's like, dude, I can't do this. And I'm like, all right. I didn't run its course and stuff like that, but he's like, all right. He's like, I'm scared I'm gonna end up like down a different path. And I'm like, all right, me too. I didn't go to another high school event. I didn't go to prom. I didn't go to football. I didn't go to another high school event. He and I stayed friends, but he said, no. I can still go to the events and not do the stuff. And I'm like, I am just not that strong. I don't believe in willpower. So I didn't go, Robin's like, hey, where's your problem? I didn't go to anything. I didn't go to senior pick. I didn't go to anything. I barely went to graduation. And people were like, what, you're too good for us? It had nothing to do with your ass. It had solely to do with, I had to protect the 6 inches between my head. I wish I was stronger. I missed some really fun, cool experiences. Then I was dating a chick that was 5 years older than me that went to Taft. That would have been kind of cool to walk into prom with. Like, that would have been fun. Right? Seriously? Right? But guess what? In June, I'm good. In June, my friend ends up in rehab. To this day, he's been in rehab 4 times. I don't wish that I was been in rehab 4 times. I genuinely, if I go back to my heart of my soul, his inability to not be around the people in the lifestyle that he needed to be in, for lack of a better phrase, as a senior in high school, is the single reason why his life took that path. And I tried and I helped with friends. I did everything I could. But I learned that early on. I don't know where that came from outside of, right, there are dogs and there are cats, and I realized that if I'm going like, so, and I don't know why I went down that path, like I just want to. But I say that because my life mattered. My life depended on it. For 4 years, our lives depended upon this. But now, we got to convert this. So the conversation isn't, oh God, David, man, none of these people are clients, man, you got to go make them clients. Forget that. What? No, David, you have to reprogram the linking in your head. Because the linking in your head is, I'm not supposed to close and access. See, the language we have is valuable. If. The financial needs analysis, I'll be done in 3 minutes. The financial needs analysis is valuable. If. So you've had associates that come in, they've seen the financial needs analysis, like, this is the greatest thing ever. They go sit with a client and they're like, oh my God, let me show you this. Man, this is what you need for retirement, this is what you need for college, this is what you need for insurance, and this thing's awesome. And they hand it to the client and they're like, and they're waiting for the client to be like, oh my God, my entire life I've been waiting for this. where's my checkbook? Let me just buy all of it. Because they think that the F&A transacts business. And all the F&A does is illustrate. If they weren't going to follow your advice, then your advice is irrelevant. Does this make sense? So one of the biggest mistakes that people make in Primerica is they get good at running the F&A, and then they deliver the F&A like it's going to do anything. You're going to close business prior to the F&A, and then you're going to be like, remember how we said if we can put together a program that gives certain predicting long-term security one for $300, right? Right? So let me show you what we're going, and you said yes? Yes. Okay, well, let me show you what we're going to do with that $300. Look, we're going to take $90 of it for the insurance, and here's why it's going to do this. And we're going to take $40 for the college fund, and here's why it's going to do this. And we're going to take $60 and we're going to do this, and here's why. And that leaves us $100, we're going to do this, and here's why. So we're going to take your $300, we're going to do this, 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 and this, because the math says this is the best way to use the $300 in order to get us closer to what it is you want to accomplish. Does that make sense? That is how our business works. That is not the culture we have in this room. Well, why? Because it's not the culture we've spent any time reigniting. Or have we wasted time? No, because when we get good at what everyone else is good at, we get to put this shit on nitrous because no one gets to touch us. When you think about your lists for Osman, how many of you have a list for Osman? When you ask yourself, why are they coming? We had people on Wednesday night confused. They're like, yeah, I had so many people coming and none of them showed up. Well, why were they coming? Well, they're coming to support me. Coming to support me makes sense on a Saturday afternoon at a barbecue. I got this thing I'm working on. I'm really excited. Could you come on Wednesday? Really mean a lot. I want you to really, I want everyone in my life to understand support what I'm doing and mean the world. Sure. Right? Yeah. But then Monday the dog threw up, Tuesday the cat threw up, Wednesday the kid threw up. And now you're supposed to get in your car and drive for 30 minutes to go to some meeting in order to support a buddy of yours. Do you think that there's some voice inside going, why do I need to actually go to the meeting to support him? I already support him. I've already talked and then we're standing at the room going, I thought they said they were going to come. Why? Because we thought the language was going to matter. But I told them I got financial wellness and this is really cool. Does this make any sense? Yeah. So, of course, we have an opportunity to grow and get better. The good news is that we actually have the language, we understand sport, what it is we're doing, we got that foundation. Now it's, okay, how do we? It starts with our list. It starts with identifying what do they get out of it. It allows us to, and that starts with asking, and where the all concept, right? You gotta ask, listen, and link, right, through that process. So it allows us to create. But what happens, guys, and what we're gonna spend, right? The fun thing is as we move forward, I'm gonna be able to get like my 20 minutes a week on. I get to be me. Like I love this shit. Like I love what book are you reading? I love challenging thought process. I love limiting thought process. I love the things that are stopping us and how we clear hurdles. I love all that stuff. But for 7 years, I haven't talked about it. Jim Rohn said, if someone's an idiot, they don't need motivation. Because then they're simply a motivated idiot. Primerica has a tremendous amount of motivated idiots. I was one for a very long period of time. Ran a really bad system really, really long. What if we had motivated, inspired visionaries that can talk about a business, that can get strength in the value, that allows someone to be clear as to where they are and where they fit, and it's okay if they're anywhere, but we have to put them somewhere. If this group of people don't know that one of the most prideful things David has in his life is the fact that he's got a college fund for his daughter, none of them can truly support what it is he's doing. None of them can get emotionally connected to his journey because that is a critical piece to his journey. But I have a question for you. If David gets good at conveying his journey, the impact Cindy he's making simply not for them to buy or join, but for him to be good at making the impact, you think there's going to be a handful of them that might want to have the same impact on their daughter or their son that David has on his daughter? But if David goes in, man, I got to sell you a college fund, that's a misaligned expectation. See, you have a misaligned expectation of what it is we do and what you think we do. And for years, we've been trying to clear it. Right? Everyone in your life loves you. Everyone trusts and respects you. You have a laundry list of people that you've influenced. In fact, you got a heart the size of California. You're amazing. I've never met anyone. Right? Everybody loves you and believes in who you are, and you fundamentally believe in this. Isn't that interesting? If you fundamentally believe in the power of a plan, you know what it felt like to not have someone to talk to. You know what it felt like to feel like, man, we're going to have to work until we die. That's for other people. Help like that's for other people. You know what that feels like. You know how I know that? Because I was there. Everyone in your life loves and trusts, respects you, and is impacted because they know that you put their needs ahead of yours. And you fundamentally believe in the power of what we have. And your list looks not quite like this. Your list looks like, no offense, she's got a way bigger heart than you. Your list looks this long, doesn't it? But if I ask the same question, the same answers, right? How is it possible? It's possible because we've designed it that way. Now, we've shifted. And it'll shift for you. When? It'll shift when?
When I work on it.
If. Not when you work on the if. It'll shift if you'll shift. There is no working on the shift. It'll work if. It'll change if. It's not up for discussion. It's not a, well, Rick, you really think it will? 1,000%. If. And so we're going to spend a lot of time making sure we get our ifs in alignment. And it's not going to change overnight. But David's assignment is 60 appointments in 60 days. He's literally called his friends and it's like, look, I just need to come do this. I do not need you to buy or join. I just need you and your spouse for 20 minutes. I need you. I'm coming home. And what are they all saying? All of them. You know why? Because they like his ass. And he genuinely is convinced he's not allowed to sell them anything. He's not allowed to recruit them. Literally. You all think I'm joking. If David calls me and says, can you come with me on the go back because they want to buy? And like, please, I ain't talking first. He's on a moratorium. Well, how can you do that? Because he hasn't closed anything for a while anyway. It's not like he needs to. Let's put the skill list up there. Sin, let's overcome the if. Arson, let's overcome the if. That's what our opportunity is. Love you guys.
All right.
We're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to introduce something. You know, I was laughing. So Brett and I have these little band things, right, that measure our steps. And after a meeting, Brett's done like 10,000 steps. And I never have. And I just realized that when last week we talked about enrolling, right? And we talked about the all. And that was ask, listen, and link. And that the key of enrolling is connecting. And that part of the way that I naturally look to connect with all of you is to go to your physical level, right? When I'm talking to the twins, I go down here, right? And it's not so hard, it's not that hard for me. You're all sitting down, and so I have a tendency to connect sitting here. But that does jack shit for them. So I might be walking a little more today, because I was like, holy shit, this is the difference.
You need a chair with wheels.
I thought that was really funny. So a couple things came up for me in that conversation that I thought were interesting to share. And one of the things that hit me the most was, so Brett talked about the if. So when I make that picture, anyone who's been here for a bit, what do you think? How great is that? Right? I just draw a picture and you can say I'm IC, which is right. This is the I am IC. Now, if I'm here or here and I'm getting here, I actually have to do there's a whole bunch of little things that are happening for me to get from one place to the next. Right? It's pretty rare that we just kind of jump up there. Now, it depends on how you've structured the IMIC, but generally speaking, there's a couple things, at least one or two things that are happening from getting to where you are to the very next place that you want to go to. Right? And then here's our little big beacon. Yeah? Okay. So, what you mean was Brett used the word link when he talked about David just now. And so David has a list, and you might think that the very next step is go close all these people, right? But the precursor to any of this beacon was, where's the thinking? Because the thinking is what impacts the doing, right? If your thinking is out of alignment, you'll never do what you actually are trying to accomplish. So the thinking becomes the precursor. So if you're not accomplishing what you want to in your business, in any business, you start to say to yourself, what are my limiting beliefs? You know, when you hear Brett talk about hurdles in business, you might think of that hurdle as something more tangible. Oh, I need to market to more people. Or, oh, I need to learn the product information more. And those are common business hurdles. Hurdles versus issues in this room are really about saying, what are my limiting beliefs? What is potentially subconsciously something that I believe that limits me from accomplishing my goals? And so in here we have an opportunity when something isn't happening the way that we might want it to happen, to say to ourselves, what is the precursor thinking that might be off, that might be out of alignment? And sometimes we don't even know it, which is why coaching is so important. So sometimes it takes someone else to say, you say you want this, and these are your actions, so what are we missing? Where's that limiting belief? And that's where there's this big opportunity for personal growth that applies to everything that you do in life. And so we talked today about why and how when we said it, we seem to be missing that E, right? And so we start to say to ourselves, what's happening back here that leads us to miss that E? It's kind of interesting. Well, when I did that, and I started thinking about enrollment started with connection. And I'm going to reintroduce some concepts today. So some of you have seen this before. This is our SICK, because we never came up with a better acronym for it. And SICK is our framework for talking to folks. Because what we realized is that if you think about people in your life who are incredibly effective communicators, and you actually were to break down what they do in a conversation, you will find that in every conversation, they take this structure whether they realize it or not. And the first C in this structure is commence. You need to start somewhere. You need to introduce something. The next word is connect. For someone to really hear you, we have to first start with a connection with each other, a rapport with each other. Right? At the deepest level, it's that heart-to-heart connection, because what we know is that literally from studies in the brain center, if we have a heart-to-heart connection, more sections of your brain light up than if I go into a fact conversation prior to connecting heart-to-heart. So this is like factual stuff. It's a little voodoo, but it's factual voodoo. We connect. We make sure that we have an emotional link, that we have an emotional rapport before we move on to the next step. The next step is influence. Influence says, this is their viewpoint of view. Influence says, I'm going to decide if you have the credibility for me to listen to what you're about to tell me. Every time we start a conversation, our brains naturally say to ourselves, I have a million things going on in my life. Are you worth listening to? And so it is the communicator's job being worth listening to. Because otherwise, you will start giving this amazing impact information and they won't hear any of it because they haven't decided that you're the one who should bring that information to them. Now, once you have started the conversation with a willing participant, establish your credibility on the topic of this conversation, and been invited by them to share what you have to say, you are then in the best position to actually have impact. I add a little yes. And then you get to share. And the most impactful way you can share is with, everything is done on purpose in here, guys, an impact story. And once you share your impact story, once you've shared the meat of your information, you're like, drop the mic, easy. That would leave the person hanging. And so you actually need to close the conversation, create the summary for the person, identify the value for that person, and consider your effectiveness. Evaluate how you did in the conversation. Get better. Because while there are people who are incredibly effective communicators, Bill Clinton is one of the most effective communicators of the past generation. If you actually have ever watched him speak. And if you watch a single speech of Bill Clinton's, you could break it down into these steps. That is a man in a room of 1 million people who instantly connects with every single individual. It's an incredible skill. And that's the key word. These are skills. And what do we know about skills? They can be learned. And then they can be taught. And then they can be mastered. Every skill. You can learn it. You can master it, and you can teach it. And each of those skills happens at each of these levels. Yes?
So I know, for instance, when we'll do a recruiting appointment, wherever we'll say the purpose today was for you to know me, you know you, and see if there's a person go forward. Is that in the impact part?
No, that's a good question.
No, I take
Because that's at the end.
Yeah.
That's the
at the
explanation.
end?
So yeah, that is your
So
that's your
that's-
transition.
Right. So
That's your,
my question is that every conversation that we have with someone, we have a call to action for another conversation, right?
This is your,
That's part of the close.
that's the book.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. But that's really helpful because we're actually doing that.
And you
Yeah.
mean that as close as in, like I close a sale, or close as in I close the conversation?
I'm closing the conversation, and in my close, I'm opening the opportunity for the next. Right? So part of this close concept is I'm summarizing and opening the room for the next. So we start the conversation, we connect to each other in a meaningful, authentic way. We establish our credibility on the topic. We share this fabulous information, and then we close on providing a summary of value and opening the opportunity for next steps. Now I took a look at this, and I looked at some other acronyms, because this is just the reintroduction to this. And one of the other acronyms that we've introduced is AIM, right? Because we stick with AIM. And AIM stands for audience, impact or intention, and message. So before you're going to have your conversation, who are you talking to? What is the impact you're trying to create? You start with the end in mind. And what is your message? If you haven't figured this out, you might actually get to the impact and you're like, cool. But the truth is, the likelihood is if you haven't thought about that, you're not getting the impact. Because you don't even know what the heck to influence them on. Yes.
So is the impact from AIM, is the impact the same impact we want to do when we do the SIP?
Yeah.
Okay, so
This is why we use the word impact in each of these places, because they all connect to the same impact in that conversation.
but right now we should be more focused on what it is. So we're working on what it is right now.
Working on
So
what it
when you
is.
get in the weeds about,
And I appreciate, right? So part of my job as a coach is to acknowledge that in this room, we have different folks in our lineup at different stages. So it is perfectly acceptable for you to ask a question like that. Now I might say, right now in this room, we're working on the what it is, and you and I can connect on the how it works because you already have the what it is, or I'm actually gonna answer your question because people hearing it can just get the benefit of it, even though they might need to hear it 3 more times. So don't not ask the question because that's really important. And that's always, right, my job. When I was a teacher, I had students who learned different ways, right? And so it was so good. So audience, so because what I started to do was look at these precursors, right? And the reason that the precursor comment hit me so much and came up was really interesting because this week I met with Wendy, who's on Tony's team, as most of you know. And Wendy and I had a conversation about strategic planning. And we put down her quarterly goals and her monthly objectives and her weekly priorities and her daily tasks. And we just did it. And I pulled out the planning sheet. You guys have seen the triangle. And we went through it and she looked at it and she said, wow, that would have been really overwhelming if I hadn't mastered why first. Because really all we did was get why 25 times on a sheet of paper. And it hit me that I might have brought that piece of paper out too soon if she hadn't shared that with me. Because I'm learning what is 1 degree more intense assessment. And so it got me thinking, how do I get better for my lineup, for all of you? How do I get better at thinking about have I fully introduced and have we fully mastered the precursors to every skill that we're talking about? So I started saying, okay, now wait a minute. Yet last week I talked about all. Because I've had a lot of people go like, wait, so am I supposed to do all? Am I supposed to do SIP? What am I supposed to do here? And all was about enrolling. which is ask the questions, listen to the answers, and link for them what they care about, right, with the impact that you want to have. There's that damn I word again. Impact. And if I had the I, it's ally. You loving that? All comes full circle. Because that's how we build allies. Right? So I took a look at this and I said, okay, where does this fit in? Well, in some sense, I'm enrolling at every point in the conversation because I'm actually enrolling the person at each stage. I'm enrolling them in my overall impact and message, and I'm enrolling them at each stage. And what was interesting to me about that, still with me on my journey?
Yes.
Was that if you went back to your materials from Brett several years ago when SICK first came out with SICK, each level has a particular question associated with it. Isn't that interesting? When we were starting, right, when you were starting, and which was interesting because you said, well, we say, the point of today is you're going to get to know you. And Brett always goes with, hey, do you have any questions? Does that work for you? Can we continue, right? It's that commence starts with that question of enrolling the person into the conversation. Connect is about emotional questions. Emotional related questions. How are you doing today? Wow, that sounds really exciting. Tell me more about it. What, where, when, why, how? On that emotional level. Influence, right? An influence, right? Establish the ability to add value by asking a question. Ask a value question. Now, impact is where the impact story comes in. And this is another skill. Yes.
So the value question would be something that I probably could say many times. Do you see value in what we're talking about?
I'm not overly creative.
If your tactics are sound.
There's a pretty easy value question. Do you see value?
Or is what I'm saying about sound totally crazy?
Right? And then on the close, right, it's the next question, right? And that's another place, really, that this is about bringing the summary of value together and opening the possibility for next steps. How could this make a difference in your life? Next step, your opportunity, opening the opportunity. That's what enrollment is about, right? Identifying the opportunity or possibility in the other one's life. So I looked at all of this, and I thought, if I throw all that up at one time to someone, that might be like handing Wendy the planning sheet the first day we talk about wine. Fair? So I said, what's the precursor? What's the link that I would want to start with? And I noticed that I had a cue here, and a cue here, and a cue here, and a cue here, and an ask here. And it became incredibly clear to me that the primary skill to being successful at this, because this is the skill in our business and in any business to master, is asking questions. It all starts with being a great question asker. And let me rephrase it. It all starts with becoming a great question asker. Recognizing the different types of questions. We've talked a little bit in here about open-ended questions versus closed-ended questions. Most of the time, you want to talk about open-ended questions. Why would you want to ask an open-ended question?
It provokes thought. It provokes thought of the person you're asking, rather than just a yes or no answer. It promotes a conversation that is going to be that they're going to care about.
Exactly. It generates that conversation. It generates that opportunity.
Just taught that to a new employee at Staples. As he's trying to sell a printer, and he's not asking. He's asking close-ended questions, and the customer's just bored. No, no, yes, no, no, yes. And so I taught him about open-ended questions. And after we were done with our training session at Staples, I brought him aside and said, "Now look, this isn't just for Staples. What you just learned is something you should apply to every conversation you have for the rest of your life. Whether you're just talking about football, whether you're talking about drinking beer, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever you're talking about, you should be asking an open-ended question. Do you like beer? Yes. Boring. Oh man, I like this beer. Well, dude, I like this beer. Hey, that's cool. We should go to brewery tour. Something. Something happens.
Exactly. That's 100% it. That's exactly it. Now, here's what's interesting. We will be doing a lot of practice on those broad, open-ended questions. Does that mean we never use closed-ended questions?
Thank you for illustrating the point.
What? Did you like that? Did you like that? I'm illustrating the point. Because one of the questions that you actually asked that Brett has used is what? Do you?
Do you see value in what we're talking about?
Is that a closed-ended or an open-ended question? That's a closed-ended question. Why would Brett use a closed-ended question in the middle of a conversation?
Strategy.
And what does Brett want you to say?
Yes.
Yes! Because we know that in our brain, this fascinating thing that I will always give you information on is that when you say yes, your brain opens up to the next yes. And when you say no, your brain opens up to the next no. And so here's the thing. Here's where that little skill comes into place. Do you think that Brett asked the question, do you see value? If he's not sure whether you're going to say yes.
Yes, yeah, I know you.
He asks it when he knows you're going to say yes. And that's a skill. And so when you practice it and you ask a question and someone says, not really, for someone else, you get to say to yourself, oh, that's a skill that I have an opportunity to work on. Knowing when the person's going to say yes. Knowing that I have enrolled them in the conversation to begin with. Your mom's doing dishes and you try to talk to her about the fact that we just got the Drive 401k and you're so excited about it and you want her to be equally excited. And you're like, she's like, oh yeah, you're just still doing that insurance thing. And you come here and you're like, my mom says we're just doing that insurance thing. She doesn't get what we're doing. Is there a possibility that she wasn't even in a place to hear you? See, Tony's face, now communication happens in many forms. Tony's face is a visual of recognition happening for those of you who can't see Tony's face right now. You need to enroll in the conversation. You've connected. You think you've established credibility. And you get a no. Means we take a step back and say, okay, where are we? Where in the precursor? What's the missing link? Because when you link each of the links all together, you will get to where you were trying to get to. Which is really exciting. Because it means if you're not getting there, we just have to find where the missing link is and link it. That's what we get to do in here. And it all starts with being great, becoming great question askers. And the really fun thing is that on Wednesday, we had a unique opportunity to practice this skill. Because the other thing that I realized in working through this in my own crazy head is that when we talked about why, many of us were missing the E. And when I talk about sick, I have a strong tendency to start at that C. I have a strong tendency to start at connecting. And because it's sick, you could easily hear it as this. In fact, most of us start out only hearing ick. We jump right to impact, and then we go to close, and people are like, whoa, 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 I don't want to fire join. And David's like, fire join? I said nothing about fire join. But if you go right to ick, it's icky at the end. Now the good news is you can always clean it up. So you can always reset, you can always clean it up. And I realized I start oftentimes in here in my skills at connect and was forgetting commence. Forgetting that you actually need to start the conversation by enrolling that person into the conversation. And when we went, and we'll finish up in a minute, and did the wellness workshop at Hop, Skip, Drive, I got to observe our team. And Sue has an incredible ability of commencing conversation. And Paul has an incredible ability. You guys watch Paul on Wednesday night. Paul has an incredible ability to commence a conversation. And so on Wednesday night, I'm going to encourage all of you. There are going to be people here because this is what we are focused on. Talk to someone you haven't met before. Or talk to someone on the team you haven't spent any time with. Commence a conversation with a broad, open-ended question. Test it. Try it. Let's start at the very beginning. There's a song, a very good place to start, right? Okay. Little sound of music for everyone this morning. So we start at commence. We start at the skill of asking questions. We will master that in here. And from there, we will actually move. The beauty of this guy is that what we have found is that once you get to certain stages, you move so much quicker, right? As you get higher up that I want, I see. The same thing's gonna happen here. As we master each of these questions, each of the precursor skills to each stage, mastering each stage will feel the same as planning did to Wendy because she had already locked in line. Make sense? Go. What we will be opening up and linking for everybody in here because it is all about
Access. Great job.